Derive the state diagram for the following sequential circuit with one input U and one output R. When the input sequence is either 1, 1 or 1, 0 on the 2 preceding clock cycles, then on the next clock cycle R is 1, otherwise R is 0. So this right here, next clock cycle, that lets you know that the output depends only on the state. And so we can put the output on the circles that are representing the states. So we need to figure out what our states are. So what are the ways that we can be approaching either a 1, 1 or a 1, 0? So our first way is, well, we're not getting anywhere, and that's if we have just a 0. So that's a beginning state. That's going to be where we're nowhere. Okay, so our next state is going to be where we have a single 1. So a single 1 has gotten us somewhere, and we don't have an output yet of 1, but we do have, we're on our way. Then we have two possibilities from here. We could get a 1, 0, or we could get a 1, 1, and both of those will lead us towards, well, both of those give us a positive output, but different things happen depending on what the next thing is that you get on these, and you'll see what I mean by that. So we'll call this state A, state B, state C, and state D. So A, and R equals 0, because for A, all we have is a 0. This is also going to be where we put our reset. And I'll have B. And by the way, on B, our output is 0. On C, our output would be 1. And on D, our output would be 1. Because for C and D, we've both gotten the output that we need. Now, what you want to do here is you go with each state and you see, well, what happens if I get a 0, and what happens if I get a 1? What state do I go to if I get a 0? What state do I go to if I get a 1? So if I have a 0 and I get a 0, I'm right back where I started. And I could write this as U equals 0 if I wanted to. If I get a 1, so I had a 0, and then I get a 1, that brings me to state B. Now I'm in state B, and I have a 1. If I get a 0, then I go to state C. If I get a 1, I go to state D. Okay, now let's think about being in state C. In state C, I have a 1, 0. If I get a 0 next, where do I go? Oh, I was reading, I labeled my states differently on my notes. So yeah, I think I heard, what did y'all say? Yeah, back to A. Okay, now, so I'm going to go back, I'm going to write it again. I have 1, 0. If I get a 1, then where do I go?
C?
No, because C says I have a 1, 0. I don't have a 1, 0. But I can go back to B because I've got a single 1. Okay, now if I'm at D, I have a 1, 1. If I get a 0, where do I go? C, correct. If I had my 1, 1 and I get a 1, where do I go? Stay at D. If you look at the answers from Dr. Trahan, he labeled his C and D, I think, are different from mine. So just, does that make sense? You get to choose how you label your states, and I believe he chose 0A, B1, C 1, 1, and D 1, 0.